You can take advantage of the property market or fast track your portfolio essentially if you actually put in the work. So everyone who wants to just buy that brand new home, I don't have to do any work, well, you're going to pay market value or you buy a brand new home off the plan. You're right. You're just essentially waiting for the market to do its thing. If you want to fast track your portfolio the way I've done for myself and my clients, you need to put in some sweat equity.
The end game for all of us is to improve our portfolios, to generate wealth where we can do the things that we love, whatever those things are. Maybe we love just buying property.
Welcome back to Property Banter by Pinnacle Buyers Agents, powered by HtAG Analytics. This is episode 2 in this 2-part series where we're joined by Dr. Matt again. If you haven't watched part 1, go back and watch part 1 before you watch this episode. This is going to be a cracker where we discuss affordability, supply and demand metrics and show you how to find the next hotspot. Please like, subscribe, share it with a friend. Let's go. Well, when we invest at an area, we always want to make sure an area is affordable to first home buyers, investors, and owner occupiers and upgraders.
Absolutely.
And if you cover all sectors of that market or all the buyers that are there,
the more demand you have,
the more chance.
The more growth Now, I'm talking about demand. I haven't addressed the supply. But I'm speaking about affordability and its importance. Affordability is important to generate internal demand. Now, that can be both investor and owner-occupier. It's mostly owner-occupier demand. But, you know, as you said before, sometimes we invest in areas that we live in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's rare. It's less rare now, but, you know, it happens. And then that invites investors. When you get a compounding of internal and external demand, you get this hotspot plus 10% growth annual. However, so the next thing that I do is I always consider affordability. So affordability now shifts on the basis of your price point because we're looking at 5 to 650. It's a long story to explain. What is in our affordability index? I'll do it quickly. It is medium suburb incomes, current interest rate plus 2 to 2.5%. And I say current interest rate, I mean the RBA cash rate plus 2.5% because that's what the banks lend at, or sometimes even more. You have the typical price of property within that area, and we assign 50% of medium incomes to repayment of mortgages. So it's essentially like a mortgage stress indicator. So for a price point that's between 5 and 650, I would usually set it at less than 35 because it's 35 years to own. Mortgage term is 30 years, remember? So it's 30. Now it could shift depending on the price point, but we'll need 3 podcasts for that. Essentially, we've got 75 entries here. Okay, what is the next thing? Remember how we said reducing supply, increasing demand equals price growth. So we need to now address the supply side of the equation. Why am I not addressing the demand? Well, I've set the stage with affordability. I've eliminated the risk with the RCS score and confidence. So I've set the macroeconomic factors, if you will, first for that suburb. Now I want to reducing supply. And this is the answer. Do you want a hotspot or a warm spot? A hotspot has a dramatically reducing supply and a dramatically increasing demand. But we're already too late. When it's a hotspot, you're already too late. So this is why we're going to address the supply first, make sure that we restrict the supply, and then there's a way of looking at the demand to make sure that it shifts into a hotspot. So I start with, what are the supply metrics? You got stock on market percentage. Let's put it less than 1%. Would you agree with that one? Inventory, I usually do, where is it?
1.5.
Where's the inventory? We just changed our presentation of the table. So let's say 1.5 months of supply. Again, now we look at building approval ratio.
Go 1.
Less than, I'll put it 1.5. You can go 1. I'll just cast the wider net for now. Let's see. And hold periods is the next one. Now, what I'll do first, I think it's important for the listeners to understand that what I did here, greater than equal to, let's do 7 years. Okay, so first I've listed all of the supply metrics. By the way, we've got 52 entries, So first I listed the supply.
So we've narrowed down now. 15,000 suburbs. And we started with, and then under that 650 price point, we had 9,500 or something.
Correct. And then we're down to 52, but everything is connected into a story. First, it's our budget. Next, we wanted to eliminate risk because we're low risk. Let's say the third thing, we wanted a warm spot, as in we wanted to anticipate where areas will go or move. These are the 4 points or the questions that I usually ask. And that constitutes a brief. And then you construct the metrics on the basis of the brief. Now, when you're addressing supply, you see 4 metrics there, but this is a more temporal representation of supply. And what do I mean by temporal? I mean, you have to address different time domains of supply. So stock or market percentage is current supply. Inventory is average months of supply. So it has a historical element to it. Building approval ratio is future supply of new dwellings. So it takes 2 years for a building approval to materialize into a new dwelling. So right at the cusp when we want that warm spot to turn into a hot spot, we don't want influx of new dwellings coming to the market, which will stifle price growth. So we want to restrict the building approvals now. And then hold periods. Hold periods is future supply of existing property, or it can be new. Well, it's not new because you're holding it for 7 years. So it's already,
established.
But it's already established there. And then hold period is an existing one. You know, you got like how long do people on average hold onto the property in a particular area? So it also signals livability, whether people like to live there. It is a difference between an area that disposes of its existing dwellings every 3 years and an area that does so on the base of 14 or 15. And this is where the myths are busted as well. And what you have some of the Melbourne areas, for example, where people are saying, oh, high crime rates, don't go there, plague, you enter the suburb, you'll die.
Crime rate is the last metric that I look at, the last bit of data.
But then I go and I say, okay, hold on. If that's the case, why are people retaining property on the average 13 years? And by the way, average in Australia is maybe 7 or 8. Which is why I put 7 here. So how come people are holding onto the property 13 years in that suburb if they don't really want to live there? Just, again, the assumptions that we make, they can really cloud our judgment. But see, we've addressed the temporal aspect of supply. We've addressed both now, future, past, and we addressed the livability factor. We have 52 entries now. We're not going to be analyzing 52 entries. So the next thing that I do, for example, if we wanted to eliminate hotspots is, there are various ways to do this, but for example, you go to Delta last year or price growth in the last year, and you set it at less than 10%. If it's already hitting the above 10% mark, you are already into the hotspot territory. So what do we have? We have some, see, this is the thing. So I have to expand to expert. Where do you, I have to learn how to actually use this new database. I want to see all of the suburbs. We have North.
When did you do this update?
Yesterday.
So it's new.
Yesterday. It's new.
Yeah.
It's new. So we have, what do you have? Some of the suburbs, let's say you got the Mount Sheridans of the world.
Yeah.
You got the Melton West of the world. What do you have here? You have Kurrajongs. What other areas? Gordon Wales of the world.
Yeah.
Let's see, Edmonton, the Dubbo, Brookfields. We're talking about hotspots on hotspots. You know what I mean? Let's see which ones I would. So that would be 30 there. Now, these are the suburbs that I would actually be, if we're talking about, let's say, the warm spot aspect, and see what you've done there. I had 2 Cairns areas and two Melbourne areas. So the Cairns areas will be more of an area that is in between a warm spot and a hotspot.
Yeah.
So if you're, for example, return time frame, Edmonton would be, let's say, what's the other one? Brinsmead as well.
Brinsmead, yeah.
That's
Bayview Heights.
Bayview Heights as well.
Bayview Heights.
Those are the ones that are actually towards in between a hotspot and a warm spot.
Yeah.
And this comes back to your return. You're not going to be waiting about 2 years to sit on the sidelines to get 10% plus growth. You're going to be waiting 1 year. Let's look at, for example, let's say the Bayview Heights. Let's expand.
Let's have a look at it.
Why is that area? Now, what I wanted to say to people, you need to construct a narrative. You need to relate to your brief. And then you get all of these areas. And obviously 30 entries is too much. And there are additional ways or filters that you can actually insert in order to page length. Here it is. There's 50. You expand it all the way down. So there's additional ways you can just narrow the database. You then come down to the suburb page and then you have to analyze it. Let's you do the Bayview Heights, for example, Now, every piece of data on a page becomes information. Now, you first have to expand all of the metrics and you have to look at everything. So, for example, if you want to analyze the short-term appeal of a suburb, you first go to supply and demand metrics. So you first look at affordability and then you look at supply and demand metrics. But let's say we are on Bayview Heights here. What you're looking at affordability. See, this is sitting at about 30 years to own. It's still very affordable for its residents. What's the price point? See, it's 655. It hasn't seen 10% growth. It's sitting at 6.75. As I said, it's encroaching in towards that hotspot territory, but it's not yet there. Which means you'll probably be waiting about 6 months to a year to see that 10% plus growth. And this now needs to refer back to the brief. But whether this suburb is a good investment location or not doesn't depend inherently on the suburb. You need to actually compare and superimpose every single metric here against other suburbs under the same price point. And I mean, to show you what we do, I'll just go quickly. We have a complex ranking system that actually ranks the suburbs, gives the scoring, assigns weighting to different metrics in response to the brief. You need to provide a rationale. You can see my screens. But anyway, looking at Bayview Heights, for example, for now, what do I like about this area and why is it a good investment location? So look at the stock on market trends. So you need to analyze both the current values, which are sitting at 0.23%. You got 4 listings, but what do we also have? We see a nosediving in the overall trend as well as a nosediving in the recent trend. Trend equals direction in property. Property is a liquid asset. It exchanges hands on a much less regular basis than it does for shares and crypto. So when you're establishing trend, you're establishing direction. And this is inadvertently how you can actually interpret the future. So let's say you have a 4-year trend for this area where the stock or market is actually taking a nosedive. This will extend into the future. Now, can you multiply it and say and be certain that it will do so in the next 4 years? No, but allow for a contingency factor and say you'll be certain that this slope will most probably continue for the next 2 at least. You know what I mean?
I definitely see it. And I think
inventory is reducing as well. Building approvals are sporadic, virtually none at the moment, I think. Building approvals, only 3 approvals. Look at the hold periods. So yes, there's been a recent drop, but it's sitting at above, normal market cycle, which is about 7 or 8 years. It's 9.12. Look at the overall increase in hold periods. There's a bit of change in sentiment, but people actually like to stay in this suburb and live there more and more, which is a long-term indication metric as well. It's also supply side. Now you have to go to the demand side. Remember how we said, like, let's say your investment property gives you values at a particular point in time. So let's say 27 days on market, which is very low. That's not enough. I need to know the trend. Overall trend in the days on market is dropping. Not only that, even recent trend is dropping. So increase in demand is actually picking up. So this suburb is not generating 10% plus growth, and yet its supply and demand dynamics are acting as if it's a hotspot. So there's a lag there that you can take advantage of. So it's generated 6.5% growth in the last year, but I'm looking at its metrics and the slope of all of the supply and demand metrics. It is acting like a hotspot, and it still hasn't seen that hotspot returns. So there's a lag that you can take advantage of. Look at the vacancy rates. Vacancy rate overall trend is reducing, as well as recently it's taken a nosedive. So, I mean, everything, look at the buy and search index. So we got rent search index increasing, buy search index is also increasing, not dramatically. Now, all of the metrics are organized in the...
They're all trending in the right direction you want them to be.
Absolutely, but also metrics are organized with respect to their correlation to growth, i.e. importance. Now, days on market, and this is where I see people make a mistake. They refer to buy search index, and they think that that's the most important metrics when it comes to determining, growth or demand. But they just need to sit down and reflect how long it takes between you searching for a suburb and you actually purchasing in that suburb. So you actually need to look at days on market. Days on market is a much more, I guess, appropriate reflection of current demand in the market. And then when you establish trends for that, then you can establish direction. Then you move into one of other important metrics. Renter to owner ratio very low. Remember, influx of potential stock in future minimized. IRSAD, which is socioeconomics, a score from 1 to 10 is sitting at a 7. For this price point, by the way, which is $650, it is very rare. So that's phenomenal. You never see, and this is, again, remember when I say weightings, assigning weightings to metrics, which actually informs the ranking in your scoring system. And this is what we teach in our mastermind course or mastermind community. But going back to... you never see an area, let me rephrase that. You rarely see an area reach the 900K mark, the million K mark, with an RSAD score of 1. So if you want these Bayview Heights, which is 650, to go to 950, you have to have good socioeconomics. You can't be a socioeconomically disadvantageous area to increase to that point where it's at $1 million mark and it's holding its value. It's very hard. This is why I'm saying your budget restricts, the economic underpinning of the area actually can inform how much area it can grow. So in this instance, because we're at 650 mark and we wanted to grow to 900 to 950 to $1 million, RSAD becomes very important. Now, let's look at its GRC. It has seen negative growth in the past only actually twice. Now, again, analyze everything on a page. Analyze the curve. Analyze how much it's been in the negative growth before. How long it has spent there. How many years it is growing negatively. All of that. And now, when I say analyze, don't just look at this graph. Look at other areas. Again, the ranking. Remember, look at other areas and you need to rank them. But we're just looking at baby hides, for example.
Yeah.
I mean, what I like about its GRC, and I know how other GRCs look, it has seen minimal negative growth in the past. It actually has clearly defined cycles. I like what I'm seeing. It's typical price as well. For example, Perth areas, what we usually see is that in Perth areas, if you look at the typical price, it takes a substantial nosedive and then it bounces back up, then a substantial nosedive, which is an indication of a change in sentiment, either because of centralization of industries or some other factors.
Yeah.
There's a sentiment changing in this area. What do we see? Industry centralization. Industry is not as centralized. It's a score of 100, sitting at 70, which is neutral. It's color-coded as well. There's no bushfire and flooding exposure. High infrastructure spending. It's sitting at nearly 1,400 per capita. Overall, its RCS scores are great as well. I think this is a great investment location for those that are 655 mark.
Yeah.
So that's one example. But as I said to you before, you need to construct a narrative. The narrative needs to be layered. It needs to relate to your brief. You need to layer the metrics in the same way. Then you come to a particular selection of metrics. Then you need to rank those metrics on the basis of your brief. And you need to assign weightings to each individual metric that relates back to the brief.
Yeah.
And how do you know that? You need to have an explanation for each of the weightings that reflect the brief, and then you produce a final ranking. So it's very scientific.
Yeah.
It's very process driven, which is why it is very annoying when you see, this is the suburb that you should invest in.
And people don't realize how much actually goes into it. This is what this is what we do in the mastermind community at HtAG. Until you get there, until you see the level of what we do, people don't really realize. It's amazing that they just choose based on friends and family told them, or some buyer's agent said, hey, buy this because it's a good area. There's so much difference between just buying somewhere and actually doing the research all the way through. There's
absolutely.
So much goes
imagine, Michael, absolutely nailed it. Imagine if you had to go, by the way, this is a process. Like you get a short list. Let's say this is a short list.
Yeah.
You paste an algorithm here that relates to your brief.
Yeah.
This is the back part of the method, And then you have metrics with a scoring system and all of that. And let's say you need to explain the scoring system to yourself. And this is a scoring system from 1 to 10. You assign weightings to particular metrics. And you need to explain the weightings. Imagine going through all of that and understanding, and imagine how well you're going to explain it to your client.
Once you know.
How well you're going to explain it to a client. Why suburb A is better than suburb B. Why you're looking at certain things, you're not looking at other things. And then again, relates back to your time frame, relates back to whether you want a hotspot or a warm spot, to risk profile. And then you produce a particular ranking. And by the way, this spreadsheet, for example, the ranking, it just shows this side, but it goes all the way across. And what you have, you rank the suburbs, but then you times it by the weighting of that particular metric has. Yeah. And which produces a score just for one. And then you total it. It's very scientific. But what I'm saying is when you go through this process once, you completely understand why Bayview Heights is a perfect investment location for your client. This is when the buyer's agent takes over. Now, the buyer's agent needs to do all of this, and I help them, and I teach them how to do it. But then once they have a collection of, and I always say, don't never settle on one. Never settle on one. I mean, the whole ranking process implies you arrive at the top choice. But by the way, you might come, let's say the ranking process in this instance, see, if I look at the scoring, some scoring is very close, 1,500, 1,500. See, these two are very close. Then you've got 1,500 here, that's close. You know what I mean? Yeah. So you're going to have some areas that are very close. You don't have to look for real estate in one area. Look in the top 3. This is what I always say to buyers agents. Because you narrowed what you've done. So you've gone through a filtering process that relates to your brief. Yeah? Yeah. So scientific process begins. You've come to a short list. Then once you've come to a short list, you produced weighting on the basis of the brief for each individual metric. Then you've actually ranked the suburbs and you've come with the top 5, 3 or whatever out of an entire database, Australian database. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So you're already, you're already having top three. You're already at all three are screamers.
100%.
So don't look at real estate as just one.
Yeah.
And this when it comes to asset selection.
Yeah.
This is why asset selection, and then the next part, why combining, let's say, the power of HtAG and its process with the knowledge of the buyer's agent, let's say, that you have in the asset selection as well, and trying to compound the growth. So what might happen is, let's say, Mount Sheridan was the top choice.
Yeah.
Bayview Heights was third out of 5.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But let's say you found a screamer of an asset for particular reasons relating to the client's brief in Bayview Heights.
Yeah.
You don't have to be just, reduced to Mount Sheridan. You can just look at Bayview Heights.
You don't have to be. And I think the importance of buying the warm spot and not the hot spot is the asset selection. So going back to when we were talking about Logan,
exactly. I know exactly what you're going to say. Yeah. Absolutely. No, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. So the way in which that worked was that $280,000 house in Logan in 2020, when that kicked off and that sold for $320, and I stood there with the agent going, hey, what's going on here? A month earlier, 2 months earlier, 3 months earlier, I could have picked that 280 house up if I had, doing what I love doing. We all know I love under market value, right? That's my thing. You could have bought something that needed a coat of paint and some flooring, and you could have picked it up for 240. So when you really look at it, the difference between a 240K purchase and a 320K purchase was literally a few months.
Because you didn't have...
I had no competition. This is why I don't go to auctions. I don't go to auctions. I don't do competition.
This is what happened recently in Melton West. Like I had a client call me. And
give me the Melton West. I like this. I like this topic.
I had a client call me and say, I bought in Melton West, again, a warm spot methodology. And I haven't discussed, how I'm guaranteeing that a warm spot will turn into a hot spot. We can do that in another session. Yeah. But it's a guarantee. Yeah. Okay? Anyway, so he bought, it was $550, advertised for $550. He discounted by $50K.
Yep.
Okay. Then he done a pest and building inspection.
Yeah.
And there was some, he said, like he didn't tell me exactly what it was. He said there was some minor issues. So he goes, mate, minor issues.
Yeah.
And he further discounted it by $20K. And see, this is what people don't understand. Well, people not don't understand. What people don't try to acknowledge is that you can make money and equity for market momentum in a hotspot. Yeah. But also, if you discount it by a substantial amount of money, that's also equity.
You can make a lot of money on the entry. The entry is where you make your money.
You make money when you buy and when you sell. That's what they say. So
that's true.
Going back to you and Logan or whatever, you know what I mean? Like buying under market value and understanding. Yeah. If you buy the right asset, but now remember, you can't buy the right now. This is where the tricky bit is. You can buy a phenomenal asset in a shit area and you still see minimal growth. Now, I'm not talking about development. I'm talking about simply buying a house, coat and paint. You know what I mean? Like, you'll still see minimal growth if it's a shit area. So, because most of the growth actually comes from the area itself, not from the actual asset. Now, I'm talking simply minor renovations, nothing. I'm not talking about, let's buy and I'll put like 40 units here.
Yeah.
You don't care where it's located. No. As long as there's demand for your units. You know what I mean? Yeah. But you, for example, buying in Logans of the world or buying in an area where you find value in an asset, but supply is restricted.
Yes.
Demand is still not there, as in only minor owner occupiers are trickling in. And remember how, if you go back to my algorithm, I've addressed the supply first. I haven't addressed demand. No. I'm looking into a warm spot. No. So I want to make sure that the property is affordable. I want to make sure the supply is very restricted, and then you come in and you find value with an asset and you're discounting the Melton West of the world. He discounts it by 70 grand further. Yeah. Man, even if you're waiting 2 years for this warm spot, and by the way, it will turn into a hot spot because supply is reduced. There's no supply coming to the market.
Supply. But there's a supply, but you can't replace it for the same money. So that 400, we just bought one for 460 and it's a 3-bedroom and it's 7 years old. It's 7 years old.
Sorry, for how much?
For 460. Courage, right? Talking about buying in the areas you're talking about data. We've been doing that.
Courage typical value is much more than that, though.
Of course, this is fairly new. So what I'm saying is buying the value.
$549.
We paid $460 for a 7-year-old 3-bedroom. This is a brand new home, right? And once again, this is about buying a value.
3-bedroom. So
tell me.
3-bedroom is $486.
Yeah.
So let's say $490, you bought it for $460.
We paid below, right? But what I'm saying is you cannot replace it. By the time you buy the block of land, you cut it up, you put in, civils, you pay council contributions, etc. And then you build a 3-bedroom home. in today's money, post-COVID money.
This is the
you can't replacement value. I talk about all the time. So now, not only...
Sorry, hold on. Let me ask you this. Because I come from an estimating background.
Yes,
as I said, so it's perfect. Yeah. So what you're saying is that you can't actually build it for that much.
No,
if you bought a block of land, bought a block of land that's the same amount, like the same size, and you built the same type of house there, you cannot replace it for that much.
No, in today's money, you can't build it. This comes back to the inflation, the trolley analogy, right?
Yeah.
You can't build that house again for that money, but yet it's 7 years old. Now, to me, a 7-year-old house is as good as a new house, right? Carpet and paint, flooring and paint.
Absolutely.
That's pretty much for a rental. That is textbook. That's like driving a 3-year-old Toyota Corolla that's got 30,000 Ks on it. That's still a brand new car to me.
Absolutely.
So what I'm saying is we're looking at the data. We know that Melton, Kurrajong is great, and we've been there since the start of the year, or February, right? March. We've been there since March, right?
You've been there longer, man.
No. I've been talking about it, but then our first purchase was March, I think.
Yeah, okay.
So anyway, we've been buying plenty. We just
right at the time when Melbourne was the plague, yeah?
Nobody. I remember everyone talking about how Melbourne's not on yet, and they're all talking about it now. So
but before you go there, for example, it has your lower yields. Maybe it doesn't suit a certain purchase.
No, but we buy we have ways of which we make sure our yields are great.
No, exactly. So not taking into account that you can lower it and increase the yield.
Yes.
Because you're buying it a lot, because you can discount it.
Yes.
I mean, that yield that gentleman bought, it was valued at 450, discounted at 80K. The yield dramatically increased because of it. You know
also, that owner-occupier exiting, okay, that leaves us with an empty property. Now, an empty property, a lot of Melbourne properties are currently under-rented from after COVID, right? A lot of Melbournians don't realise they can put rents up because they're still literally damaged from COVID. They don't want to lose the tenant because of what they went through. Whereas everyone in Queensland's like throwing up rents left, right, and centre because they know that there's another tenant around the corner. Whereas in Melbourne, they haven't done that. So when we look for opportunities for our clients where we buy stock where the owner occupier is vacating. So we get vacant possession. You can do the flooring and the paint. It's a minimal spend. You get the maximum rent and your yield shored up straight away on purchase. Right, that minimizes your holding costs in those areas. So these are all the things that we do on top of the data.
I want to ask you something.
Yeah.
Okay. First, I want to address two things. So first one is this, let's say, the oversupply thing, oversupply of property in, Melton.
Right.
Yep,
I know that. I've heard this. I haven't seen it.
A theme. Now the confusing bit, and I want to, and this is not leading into data and HtAG. This is like a precursor question to what I want to ask you, and what I wanted to ask you was
Melton supply asset selection.
No, sorry. The cost of buying in Melbourne. The cost of buying in Melbourne. That's it. The cost of, how like legislation issues.
Okay,
hold on. Yeah. All of that. But let me first, I wanted to pair that with supply.
Okay, go.
So the first thing is, like, when people say there's an oversupply, and like the issue is, I don't know whether they're referring to the LGA or to the suburb with the same name. That's what I'm confused about. Now, if you're purchasing in a suburb, I just want to know where this oversupply is. And if we're thinking, for example, looking at Melton West, look at the nosedive in the stock market. Yes, it's sporadic.
Yeah.
Even recent, if you look at the last 6 months, there was a nosedive, there was a dip, then there's up, now there's a dip. Like it goes, but it's trending down. You would say that it's at a trend, that it's trending down. The same for inventory.
Yeah.
Look at the hold periods hold periods
are increasing.
9.5, Melton West.
Which is above the average.
Building approvals are taking a nosedive. Where's this oversupply that they're talking
There's
about?
no oversupply.
Let's look at Kurrajong. Where's Kurrajong?
But you know that some of these people that use the term oversupply might simply just be talking about the land, not touch on that, please. I know you've spoken about this before. Just because there's land around there doesn't mean it's actually approved. Hold on.
They're talking about oversupply. So they're not talking about potential development land.
No.
So first, let's be clear. They are talking about an oversupply. If I'm looking at Melton West, there's no oversupply. Every single indicator is actually reducing.
Yep.
And not only that, it's taking a nosedive.
Yep.
Okay. Now, if they're talking about the actual available land for development in Melton West, like let's say this side here, then we have to have a discussion about, does vacant land inadvertently equal oversupply?
No.
So now the answer is, of course, no. But
because if it did, Australia, with the amount of land Australia has, it would all be oversupplied, right? If that was how it works.
Absolutely. But look at how long it takes. So first you have to have the right zoning. Then you have to develop the land. A developer needs to buy a portion of the land. A developer, I work for developers. Developers develop in stages. They don't develop everything at once because of the cash flow. There's a cash flow restriction. In the same way that there's a borrowing capacity restriction.
Yeah.
Developers have a cash flow restriction where they buy a certain portion and they stagger their developments. You know what I mean? With apartments, it's a bit different because you can go up and then you can oversupply apartments. You know what I mean? It does happen. With actual homes, developer buy a portion of land, they develop in a staggered way. There's also council release schedules that play a role, which could vary from a council to a council. Yeah. So there are multitude of steps that happen in between. Vacant land is turned into development land. Yeah. Development land is turned into homes, and homes are turned into oversupply.
And that doesn't happen overnight.
Doesn't happen overnight. Doesn't happen overnight.
No.
But for a term oversupply to even exist, what are we missing? Not enough demand to absorb it. It is then when we can say that something has an oversupply.
Yeah.
If there's enough demand absorbing the supply, then we don't have an oversupply.
Yeah.
So saying there's an oversupply first has to take into account a multitude of these steps, and then also has to assume there's not going to be enough demand to absorb the supply.
Yeah.
Now, what I usually say, I do Jedi mind trick on people and ask them, like, if there's vacant land now, and we look at Milton West, there's vacant land.
Yeah.
Would it stand to reason that there was more vacant land before in the past in Milton West? If there's vacant land now, Milton West was developed as time went on. Yeah.
Yep.
People are adding homes. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So it would stand to reason that somewhere in the past over there, there was more vacant land before than it is now. If that's the case, what I do is I want to look at the typical price actual curve. If there's an oversupply somewhere, oversupply equals price decline. Yes. Because demand cannot absorb the more supply of property.
Yeah.
So oversupply equals price decline.
Yeah.
And looking at Milton West curve going all the way back 30 years, do you see a dip somewhere?
No.
I just see an increase. No. I just see an increase here, then a plateau, then an increase here. I don't see any dips here from oversupply.
Yeah.
So this inadvertently makes me question council release schedules and then all of the things that I mentioned before. Developments and how they're staggered, council release schedules, etc., etc. Now, a heckler in the room will say past performance is not indicative of future behavior. Well, they haven't invented the wheel by saying that, of course, absolutely. But what they're doing inadvertently is they're saying that their hypothetical future, which might not be the same as the past, carries higher weighting.
Yeah.
I have only the past to analyze. There was more vacant land before. I don't see any dips. First, I know development. I know how it's released. I know how it's staggered. We also have to know whether there's demand to absorb it. And then finally, let's look at the past. Let me see if there was an oversupply before, i.e., if there was not sufficient demand absorbing the introduction of all of this new property and resulting in a price dip. I can't see it too.
Yeah.
Now, I've analyzed it in as much a scientific way as I can.
I mean, what we were watching, we were looking at one earlier, which had a way worse graph than this. What were we looking at earlier? That dipped below.
It was a Gladstone.
Was it?
Yeah, look at the Gladstones ones.
There you go.
Look at the Gladstone. This is LGA. So we have to look at the suburb level, but LGA, look at the dip. Yeah. So I look at this dip. This dip has happened because of some reason. Why? And then I have to ask myself why.
Centralized.
It's just centralized industries. By the way, one of the areas is being shielded as a great investment location. My question is for how long, for who, etc. But if it's long term, it's just a bag of lies. But anyway, going back to Milton West. Now, I want to ask you a question. So we spoke about this cost of doing business, and this is the usual narrative that's thrown out there about Melbourne and about, like the legislative issues, tax, blah, 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 which is impacting, the holding cost, all of that. And you said to me, you gave me examples about Queensland, etc., which completely bust that myth. Can you tell me more about that?
So everyone has vacated, a lot of investors, not everyone. A lot of investors have vacated Victoria due to the land tax, right? They're using land tax as the reasoning as to why they should invest elsewhere. You should be investing elsewhere to invest elsewhere if it's a better market, not because of land tax. Land tax shouldn't be your basis for that decision. Now, in Victoria, the land tax on a $500,000 property may be somewhere per annum between $1,000 and $1,200 or whatever it is. Don't quote me to the dollar figure, but just to give you an example, right? When I add up the fees, the land tax fees that they bought in with the local council rate that we're buying in, with the local council fees, right? The yearly council fees with the land tax rate, it's actually still cheaper than just Logan City Council alone, the rates. So when you look at that, it's still cheaper so it's psychologically, it's tricking people and everyone's running from the word tax. That's all it is. And they're vacating, which is lowering the amount of rentals on the market in Victoria or in Melbourne. And then that in turn's driving the vacancy rates trending downwards. And of course, there's going to be less rentals. Now, rental prices go up with the migration and hence everything has a flow-on effect. But a false economy, people don't realize that $1,200 or $1,000 a week in land tax, that's not going to impact all of these metrics aligning.
Not a week. It's $1,200 a week.
$200 a week. $200 a year, sorry, which is $20, $22, $23 a week, right? That'll just be factored in. And no one's going to stop living somewhere or no one's going to stop going to work.
But this again, and this is a perfect example, this again refers back to this, leveraging
it's emotion
fear and not actually, sitting down and doing the calculations and understanding,
No.
Everyone was talking. By the way, Alex and I are coaches at Buyers Agent Institute, and we did a presentation. I can't remember now, man. Was it 6 or 8 months ago? I can't remember. It was right when the Townsville started appearing. So it was Perth mania back then, completely. And then Townsville started emerging a bit as a town there, But Melbourne was like, you speak about Melbourne. You need a straight jacket.
I know.
Like you're insane. And anyway, we done an analysis in-house, and we done a presentation for the Buyers Agent Institute, which was an hour and a half, 2 hours. Like literally, it was so good that it was extremely boring. And what I mean by that is like, look at these statistics, metrics, look at the patterns, it was dry, And we back then said, Melbourne is the next one after Queensland. Melbourne is but just, I want to refer people back to the mindset at that time. At that time,
short-term mindset.
Everyone was infatuated with Perth.
Yeah.
Townsville was just emerging on the horizon, but nobody was interested because everyone was like, Perth. So saying Melbourne is like, it's blasphemy of, highest degree, And we saw that in the data, man. We saw that in the data, and we saw that in the long-term trends. It was just as easy. It was really, and I still have that video, and I have the time when it was created. I can't wait to actually post it online in about.
I've already got my Melbourne videos online since the start of the year.
Year and a half. And then I remember I started speaking to you, and you were buying there.
Yeah.
You were the only one.
I was the first one,
You were buying there.
Yeah.
You were buying there. Now,
I'm not looking so stupid now, am I?
No. And now I see people starting to talk about it. But at that time, Melbourne was the word.
Yeah.
That was an oversupply. CoreLogic put out a graph which showed an oversupply.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't want you want to get into that. People talking about the tax, land tax.
Which does,
it was all negative discourse, negative discourse about it. And to us, it was, you come to a position when you go, okay, what I'm seeing, am I blind? Am I not seeing something?
No.
You know what I mean?
But we had this conversation.
Yeah.
You said
that's right.
I called you and I put out a video in February and I said, Melbourne's the next place. Guys, you need to get onto this. And what I love doing is I love the warm spot. I love buying. Actually, you could cut that part of the video. That might sound a bit funny, but I love the warm spot, right? Yeah. So me in Brisbane buying pre-COVID, going to Perth 2 years ago, me now going to Melbourne before anyone's there. I know it's going to pop off. I know it and I can see it and the data shows it, right? But I'm there buying great. I'm buying development sites for peanuts, right? These are things that are going to be highly desirable and they're not going to appear. They're like, in Brisbane right now, buying these development sites is very, very difficult, right? I buy that X factor. I'm buying all this stock now that you can't normally buy. You can't even buy a house in a boom market. I don't care. The ugliest house in the middle of a set of traffic lights, the one that no one wants, the ugly duckling sells overnight in a boom market. We're buying the stock that's really, really good right now in Melbourne. And I put myself out there and because I know it. And I said to you, how come I'm here? I'm here and I put my balls on the line. Yeah. And I put it online and I said to everyone, and the whole country is not there. Everyone's gone. No buyer's agents there. I'm standing alone. And it's February. I said to you, I said, bro, I go, can I be the only person in the country that can see something, but no one else can see it? Because you question yourself when you stand alone out of, you know, how many experts are there out there? You question yourself a little bit sometimes. Sometimes it creeps in, and that's just human nature, right? Even though you know it, you're hell-bent on it, you've put the content out, you know, but sometimes it creeps in. You're like, come on, what's going on? You know?
Yeah, I remember that discussion, and when I had a rant, I actually got upset, not at you.
You did?
I was like losing my shit over the phone, and just saying that I just don't care. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what? Like at that time, I was saying, I remember, or you, or you know, people like us were saying, like, I can't wait for the moment when he shifts so we can do the victory lap. It doesn't really even matter anymore. You know what I mean? You see people actually shifting. You see people promoting Melbourne suddenly. And it's funny how we suffer from amnesia overall in the sense that we just forgotten that 6 months ago we're bagging and now we're promoting it. It just works in cycles, but it just requires time for people to realize who's good at what they're doing and who's not. Yeah. And it is property. I mean, it's a shame. It's a shame, but fear sells. That's why we buy newspapers or used to. You know what I mean? That's why we now watch podcasts or, you know, because, you know, there's something there that tugs at our main emotional drivers. But, again, investment is a game of money. You know what I mean? As I said, below replacement value. You know, it's like...
That can't go anywhere. You can't get anywhere but up.
It's a game of... Now, if you're an owner-occupier, I do understand that there's emotional effects that go into your decision-making that could be irrational. And there are some irrational aspects of investing as well. But ultimately it comes down to, you know, you're compounding the probability, you're looking at things, you're looking at trends, you're trying to find where things are moving and then doing the... And you're right. Like, honestly, I never felt like I was never worried when I was promoting Melbourne because I was looking at data. And I'm also, my personality is like, I don't care, but I understand. And I'm not trying to say, put difference between you and I. It's just, you know, because I was getting those phone calls a lot at that time. Yeah. I was getting those phone, like you and I spoke, and I spoke to 10, 15 people who are all like long-term subscribers. You know what I mean? By the way, you're the first one that was buying. And at that time, you weren't our customer.
I wasn't using HtAG. I picked that on my own.
You weren't our customer, by the way. So I mean, hand on heart, I have to say that's the truth. And
is that a compliment?
I was getting, well, you know what I mean? I don't know.
I get some credit.
I don't know how you managed without HtAG, but must have been a fluke. No, but what I was about to say, I was getting people calls about Perth. Yeah. You know, and explaining that same thing. And it just makes sense. You know, everything moves in cycles, man. Yeah. Everything moves in cycles.
100%.
Can you tell us, I know what I'm interested in. I want to see some example, because this is my, this is where I lack, you know, the examples of what a good asset is, what's not a good asset.
You have me for that.
Like, what would you look for? What would you look for? Like, let's say,
straight off the bat, let me give you what it is. You need to look for affordable assets. So whilst affordability index when analyzing data is super important,
but that's on a suburb level.
That's on a suburb level.
Now we're talking asset.
Now, even on that, you still want to try and buy. You want to try and buy below market value. So whatever you're buying, if you can try and buy a $500,000 house.
What does it mean below market value?
So market value is what a comparable property would sell for. So let's say you've got a 700 square meter block and it's a 3-bedroom home and next door is the same specification and it's not inferior, they're identical, right? That would be your apples for apples comparison, and that would be worth 500,000. Then yours would be pretty much worth 500,000, you know, from a macro perspective, right? Let's not get into the fine details. So what you want to try and do is buy it for less than what it's valued at, because that comparable, but let's say that comparable sold within the last 3 months and it sold for 500,000. It's 500,000. Yeah. So now if you can buy the one next door, that's identical specification, but we pay, you know, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50K less than what that other one is. Well, for each 10,000 you buy, that's 10,000 in your pocket. That's you earning money on the way into a deal.
And so obviously there's market inefficiencies is what you're saying, which happens, I know it happens even in shares and trading overall. By market inefficiencies, I mean that, you know, you see these gaps that are priced inappropriately and you take advantage of it. Oh, yeah. Do you have a concern, for example, okay, it's 50K cheaper, it should be this much. What's the reason for it? Or you've come to, like, you've been doing it for such a long time that you see that it's just a miss? Yep. If you want to call it a miss.
There could be. There's every scenario exists. There is the agent that's underselling something because the vendor didn't want to pay marketing. How long
does it take you to pick up what it is, though?
How do you mean?
How long does it take you to realize that that's the reason, because that it's under market value? Or does it even matter?
To me, I represent my client, and all I care about is my client and our side. They have their representative. Sometimes their representative, being the selling agent, sells them out just based on the selling agent might just want to do volume. They don't care about getting their client top dollar. They're super busy with so many other listings, and it's just transactional for them. So that's the type of agent I love doing business with, because that in turn helps me and my client. There might be that person who just wants to sell off market, doesn't want to pay marketing. Usually that results in a lower price point for us. They don't get top dollar, because in a heated market, they would go to market, they would get top dollar, because you would have people fighting over it. And odds are in a boom market where, or even in a warm turning to a hotspot, they will get more for their property, but they're denying themselves that by not paying the marketing. So they sell it off market. The agent will just flick it off to a buyer's agent, and we'd buy that under market value. But I would also look for other things like a property that's not presentable. I love properties that are not presentable. I bought an investment for myself, my last one, that was unpresentable. And
it
looks horrible. It's full of clutter. The tenants have messed it up. It hasn't had a renovation. It's original, and it just looks tired and ugly. It needs a paint. It's just very bad. Might have a hole in the wall. Could be a fibro. Could be a hole in the wall. The fibro versus brick thing is irrelevant in Queensland. A lot of Southerners really love that brick thing. It has to be a brick home. In Queensland, I would rather be buying a high set fibro Queenslander with a downstairs. That's another topic. But you have that. But that last one that I bought actually sat on realestate.com for months and months and months. And we bought it because it was not presentable. It was very under rented. So an owner occupier automatically can't buy it. An investor has to buy it. An investor now doesn't want to buy it because it's only rented for $200 less than what it should be. The tenants are a nightmare. No one wants to take that on.
So it's essentially, if I'm getting this right, it's essentially it's like counterintuitive. It's like investing, like warm spots. It's like counterintuitive, counter-cyclical investing. You're investing in a market that's not too hot. You're going away from it to trying to find where the next one is going to be.
I do the things that the majority don't.
Picking an asset is also counterintuitive in a sense that you're trying to look for that ugly duckling kind of thing that, nobody would want to touch, but there's value. You can see value in it.
Do what the others don't. You could also be buying an investment stock versus owner occupier stock. Now, they're very different. And when you become a seasoned property investor, you can know the difference. But I might buy something which might be...
What's the difference?
Okay, I'll give you an example. Someone that wants to live in something for themselves and their family may want the 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 2-car garage. It could have an awesome barbecue and pergola area. It could have side access for the boat or caravan. This is very Queensland I'm talking about now. And then it could have a 3-car shed at the back, or it could have a pool at the back, right? This is appealing. Could be corner block, could have privacy. That's owner-occupier style property. When you have a basic Queensland fibro, 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom, it's got no appeal. It's unrenovated. It's ugly. It has no pergola, no shed, no outdoor area to sit and have a drink or have a barbecue. It's got no pool. It's got no, mind you, we stay away from pools in general, except Northern Queensland. But it might not have a back shed or whatever, right? No value add that someone might potentially like as an occupier. You can turn them into. So one of my favorite strategies is buying one of those sorts of properties, buying them under market value, freshening it up, coat of paint, floor, maybe kitchen, whatever, but then also adding a 3-car shed at the back, because that first home buyer might come along. So now it's not an investment asset. The first home buyer might come along. He could be a 28-year-old trading and go, you know what? You've put a shed at the back. I absolutely love that 3-car shed. And in my type of 3-car shed, I may have a kitchen and a shower and a toilet, right? Mm. That's a nice little value add for the value add, right? Where you don't have to go and spend that. I see some buyer's agents quoting 170 grand for granny flats or 200 grand for granny flats. It's just absolutely crazy,
Would you say, I heard this from a buyer's agent and I found it appealing. Would you say that good investment properties are also those that are desired by owner occupiers?
Yes, but you can convert them to that as well, right? So, but also if you can buy the owner occupier property, that is, and we did this recently. We bought one for about 150 grand under market value, which needed a coat of paint and floors. And it was an owner occupier.
How can it be missed? I mean, there are many reasons. I mean, it can be a distressed sale. It can be, how can the market have such deep inefficiencies where, you advertise it for something for 150K less than what
this was not advertised. There's a kicker as well. It's not advertised. The garden's a mess. The trees are overgrown. The house is tired. but they have done the kitchen and the bathroom reno, which is amazing because they're the two that I really don't want to do. And then we just had to do the coat of paint, tidy up the yard. It was just basically a lot of work, right? There was a $20K spend and there was a $150K uplift. I think that property's that was last year, by the way. That's 1 year. It's 1 year this month, I think, and that's $200K up now. So it happens, and you need to be
on what base?
Yeah, so we paid $550 for it.
Yeah.
Okay, and it was worth $650 to $700,000.
And it's now what? It's now
it would be sitting at $750 right now, based on what I've seen go in the area over the last couple of months. So my clients literally for the $20K spend, they did spend 2 weeks up here from Sydney. They did see. You can take advantage of the property market or fast track your portfolio essentially if you actually put in the work. So everyone who wants to just buy that brand new home, I don't have to do any work. Well, you're going to pay market value or you buy a brand new home off the plan. You're right. You're just essentially waiting for the market to do its thing. If you want to fast track your portfolio the way I've done for myself and my clients, you need to put in some sweat equity. You need to, worst case, if you buy something, let's say we did go to Bayview, right? Let's say we did go to Cairns, we buy an investment property there. I don't have an on-the-ground team there, but I wouldn't mind paying way less for a property than market value, but using the value-add strategies of a handyman to do a coat of paint and then call Carpet Court or whoever you've got there to come out and do some laminate flooring, right? So you don't have to be there for that.
See, you would want both. You would want both, and I agree completely with you. Like you would want both. You would want to find something below market value, like the 700, the 150K less. I mean, that term below market value is a bit confusing to me because market value is what market is prepared to pay. But now we're going into semantics. You know what I mean? Like,
no, let's not go into that.
Yeah, it's like, but I understand. Like, it's comparable sales, and you know what I mean. And if something is valued more just because, and you use a great term there, which I like, just the house is tired or whatever, you're paying less than what it should go for if it was cleaned up, And let's say you saved money there.
Yeah.
So you saved 100K there, but you're also in an area that has great market momentum. So you not only make the 100K there, but you also make it the next 7 years 200 or 300K further from market momentum.
Yeah.
So now you already doubled the the value of your of the house or portfolio. So it's like both. Because, for example, if you're, and this comes down to development, because if you're only adding the value, and that is the sole thing that you're doing, and there's no market momentum, then okay, you're going to make the 150, 200K from re-engineering the house a little, but then you sell better. You just hold it because you're not going to get anything from the market.
But you can maximize your returns, and here's what we did in Perth. Here's what we did in Perth. So we didn't buy the best suburb in Perth that had the maximum amount of growth. And I forget what it was, but CoreLogic released something and they were talking about one particular suburb that had the 36% in Perth, right? I've never seen a buyer's agent, by the way, ever go, we know that this is the best performing suburb over the next 3 years. And we've put all of our 200 clients over the last 2 years into that one suburb. I've never seen that happen because it's super hard to pick, right?
Absolutely.
So
that's what I listen. So before you go, I was asked by a buyer's agent. We're talking about Rockingham.
Yeah.
Is it Rockingham? I think
Rocky in Perth. Rockingham in Perth.
Yeah. So, okay, how do you, so Rockingham, looking at the metrics, to me, it's a bit unreasonable that it's grown 28 and another suburb that has, probably better metrics grown 22.
Yeah.
And then the question is, okay, but are the metrics is what's saying? Like, there's a bit of irrationality there. And you can't really pinpoint whether there's going to be 2 or 3% difference in this one than that one. You can't really pinpoint the exact growth, which is what you're saying. You can't really say, okay, this one's going to be 33 and this one's going to be 28, so we're going to go into the 33 one.
It doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work that way.
But you can improve your odds, and here's how we improved our odds. So what we did was we went and bought a $380,000 house for $320. And it was a corner block, subdividable, 3-bedroom brick veneer home, once again below replacement cost, because at $320,000, you can't build. A 3-bedroom home costs $300,000 to build, right? So we're buying the block of land and it's subdividable and it's a corner block, right? Data's aligning. It's great. This is a couple of years ago in Perth, when you should have been in Perth, right? Not now.
Yeah.
So we bought that under market value. We did carpet, we did paint, and we uplifted that. We rented it out for considerably higher. And what happened in the 18 months that we held it, we made 58%. Right, and when you look at that,
that's right.
That's well above.
It doesn't really matter if you're. It doesn't. So by improving the odds, I mean, first you can't really understand whether it's going to be 28 or 25 and pick 28. It's very hard. I mean, again, remember how I said increasing the probability, But then the difference of 3 to 8% doesn't really matter if you're improving the odds by this, by compounding on top of it by the way you purchase and what you purchase.
If you buy 15% under market value, tack that onto your total, right? So if that area goes up 30% that year, but you bought 15% under market value, fantastic. You're ahead.
That's right. And then you can even, then the question becomes, the next point of it is, do you sell off or do you hold it further? What's the market momentum? Can I take, these are the things that you take into consideration. But see, when I'm speaking to an individual, let's say like you, and we're talking about Perth, and you're talking about it in those terms, I understand it. It makes sense to me. But if you come to me and you say, Perth, I made X amount in the last 3 years, it's phenomenal, and it's going to be forever the same, just not,
No. Nothing's forever the same. You can't have highs without lows, and vice versa. It doesn't work that way.
It's just highlights incompetence in my view.
Yeah.
But I mean, and this is the beauty of it. Combining the two stories. Like combining. You're eliminating, increasing the probability with the data. You're trying to interpret trends. You're looking at as much as you can. Now, sometimes, as you said to me, when we chat every day, you said to me sometimes it's really hard to combine the both.
Yep.
To find the best data area set and also the best asset within that area. Yeah. But this is why when you do the ranking, you know what I mean? You're comparing, doing a whole entire, Australia-wide data set and you're coming up with 3.
Yeah. And we're going from 9,500 suburbs down to a top 3 or a top 5.
3. So it doesn't really matter. You buy the asset that's going to be great within those 3.
Yes.
You don't have to actually go for the top 1. Go for the second. Go for the third. Yep. But see which asset is going to give you the most value.
100%. Yep. And you can add values to the asset as well. We could buy a subdividable site. You could buy a granny flat site for cash flow later on. You don't have to necessarily do it now. Whatever it is, one of your favorite ones, 2-bedroom to a 3-bedroom, 3-bedroom to a 4-bedroom. If you do that conversion, that's a bang for buck conversion.
That's been working well with some. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, obviously you want to minimize the cost. So let's say you have a carport or something, you can turn it into it. But and I mean, some people even know, let's say if you have an architectural background, can know what the internal arrangement is, and there's room to convert internally 3 to 4 without actually adding an external bedroom.
100%.
Mate, you're going to invest
that is the
10,
best
15K.
way. That is the
You're going to invest 10, 15K, and there are some suburbs that have a disparity of 200K between 3 and 4 bedroom homes.
Yeah. I remember we had one that was a 3-bedder converted to a 2-bedder. We just convert it back. When you find those deals, they're amazing because it's essentially that. Someone's changed it to suit themselves, and it's devalued the property. We just put the wall back up again.
That's the inverse.
That was it. Yeah. We spent 6K on that, and that was like a 60, 70K uplift on a 220 grand property. That's not around these days.
Yeah, so there's many different ways. But bottom line is, I think the takeaway is you need to understand. When I say data, it's mainly the narrative that relates to your brief. You need to understand and construct it well, and then you need to understand assets in a way where you can maximize the value. When you combine both. Your time frame from achieving your goals shortens. Yeah. You get there faster. You can sit on the sidelines on the warm spot for about a year and a half. You don't have to fight. And as I said before, you can And
you can buy that development site. You could actually have a certain zoning on that property as well. Buying there under market value.
Well, that's the grandkids' money. Who cares? You can sit on it for whatever, a couple of years, but you're zoned.
Yep.
You're zoned.
It's amazing.
You can put in, absolutely.
So that's that superior asset selection. Whereas a lot of buyers agents are literally buying stuff in Perth, and they're fighting the crowds, and they're buying rubbish stock. They're foregoing the pest and building inspection. Their terms aren't favorable to their clients, and they're buying stock that's just inferior at the wrong time.
They're foregoing that so they can increase or speed up the time of acquiring that asset. Yeah. So they're foregoing pest and building inspection. Yeah. But shouldn't that inadvertently say that you shouldn't be in that market? If you need to cut corners to that point,
you are cutting corners essentially on purchase.
You're cutting corners. Yeah. You're cutting. By the way, we had a different example where pest and building inspection saved the person 20K. Yeah. Remember? I told you? Yeah. So you dropped it from 550
By the way, that was a good one because it was minor, not major. He probably didn't have... If the agent was any good, if I was that agent, I would have said, no, take it. I would have said, take it or leave it. And he would have taken that deal, I guarantee you. Right?
Obviously.
But here's the thing.
Happen all the time. It happens.
Yeah, and that's
good... But what I'm saying is that, see how in one market, pest and building inspection becomes a money-making thing? But in another market, it becomes a problem because you're fighting with 40 other people
But if you say to an agent, we're renegotiating the Pest and Build, the agent will literally in a boom market say, I've got 10 other buyers. I don't give a fuck what you have to say. I'll just put the next person in. That's what you're saying.
That's
100%.
what I'm saying. So I'm saying they're foregoing the pest and building inspection because the market is too hot. You shouldn't be there. While in another market, you're making money from the pest and building inspection.
And you're 100% right. And what that does is it puts you so far ahead. People don't realize how much it puts you ahead to buy in that warm spot ahead of time. No competition. That's amazing.
You know, I mean, ultimately the end game for all of us is to improve our portfolios, to generate wealth where we can, you know, do the things that we love, whatever those things are. Maybe we love just buying property and we can do that forever. But, you know, like, the thing is though, for me, I guess, you know, the main aim and the name of the game is I just want to increase and improve the ability of people to see through the fucking bullshit. Sorry to swear. To see through the bullshit, to see through the marketing campaigns, to understand how when someone is lying, to understand when the story is incomplete, to also realize competence. There's so many buyers agents coming to the market and people perceive that as a negative. That's actually extreme positive.
It is a positive.
Why? Because differentiating yourself from others becomes extremely easy.
It does.
Because the bar has been lowered. There's so many people coming, so many buyers agents coming to the market. Competency has actually been inadvertently, which seems like a paradox, man. You know, like there's less and less competence. So you're actually differentiating yourself 100%. Against others. I mean, I heard horror stories from buyers agents, you know, about, you know, why you should invest in an area. And I ask them, okay, why? Crickets. I actually don't know. And there are buyers that are using someone's money and actually securing their financial future. I mean, that's horrific, man. Horrific.
Yeah.
So I guess that's the main aim. If there's a purpose for me, it's like teaching people to, you know, both teaching buyers agents how to deliver to their clients and actually minimize all of that anxiety. Close clients quicker, reflect competence, which means ethics and trust. Minimize anxiety. That's it. And also get rid of all the mud and all the, you know, inconsistencies that are, because everything is social media dominated, you know.
100%. Give me one hotspot in Melbourne. Give me one hotspot. And this is random. This is nothing to do with anyone's.
One hotspot, one not spot.
Give me one hotspot. Give me somewhere. Actually, give me a warm spot. Give us a warm spot that has a great data set in each of the 3 Eastern Seaboard states. Let's start off with Melbourne, Victoria.
I love Taylor Hills in Melbourne.
Taylor Hills.
Taylor Hills. That's also in Milton. It's a high price point. I like Milton West. I like Kurrajong. Again, let's remember for who. But I like the trends in the metrics. In Queensland, I like the Brinsmeads. I like Baby Heights. I like Edmonton for a lower price point. Townsville has, you know, gone past its... I mean, it's a hotspot. It's a rampant hotspot. It's the same thing that we were talking about in Perth a year ago, you know. So those are popping up. Other states I'm not looking at, in all honesty, because I get driven by data. I don't really care where the suburb is located and what the suburb's name is. I just want to see what the data says. So Melbourne is, you know, will be the warm spot thing. Cairns would be in between a hot and a warm. Perth, I'm not even looking at.
Well, let's touch on WA before we go quickly. Whenever I do my data sets, I rarely have a WA come up. Because you're following a particular methodology.
Now, WA has a great, you know, a short-term indicator such as, you know, it has a nosediving supply, nosediving days on market. The issue with some WA areas, as we see, we have a dramatically increasing vacancy rate, which usually signals oversaturation from investors. So WA still has legs to grow, but again, probably a year or two, you know what I mean? Or maybe less, I'm not sure. But so those short-term indicators are great. The long-term indicators, in my view, are not.
I think some people might be saved with WA with the rate cuts and might spur on a little bit of a second end wind to that market. Look, we're going to see what happens with the economy. But at the same token, we've also got a potential GFC incoming.
Well, let's bring it down to basics. You know, again, you know, affordability in WA. Some areas are still very affordable, but you don't look at affordability in terms of, let's say, the index in years to own, but you look at the forceful increase in unaffordability. So again, I can afford the $300 to fill my trolley up. I can afford it. Can still afford it, but it's shaping impacting my lifestyle. So in the same way, when something jumps up so rapidly and so fast, even though individuals can potentially afford it in an area, you have dynamics that are changing demand patterns within that suburb inadvertently. even if it's still affordable, you know?
Yeah.
So now coming on to, I've read articles where, you know, like people who have made money in WA will suddenly be able to, you know, use that equity and actually purchase higher entry points in WA. So there's going to be a second wind of the 800K markets.
Yeah.
I mean, whoever's written that article hasn't considered affordability, servicing and serviceability into the equation because, you know, first and foremost, if I bought in a lower end of the market, I bought because of my borrowing capacity.
Yeah.
And that my borrowing capacity still remains the same. Doesn't matter if I generated 150 or 200K equity from my investment. I still have to have the borrowing capacity to extract the equity, service the debt, and then buy in a location that's of higher value.
Yeah.
So that second wind from the first wind that we've made in WA doesn't really make sense to me.
Yeah, I've seen that article.
Yeah.
It
doesn't really make sense to me. I think, I don't know what the house was. Yeah. So, but then in saying what you're saying, you got to apply everything across the board. You can't pick, you can't bin count and say, okay, in this area, you know, interest rates will play a role in this area. Yeah. But then my question is, what about others? You know, if they're going to play a role, which they will, and also let's not go up into the clouds and consider macroeconomics. Let's see what's happening on the ground with purchasing patterns. Yeah. So if interest rates will play a role in a hot spot, do you think they'll play a role in the warm spot? If the answer is yes for one, then it's yes for the other. But then which one's better? Is it better to carry the full market momentum in a warm spot and actually capture the entire hot spot? Yeah. Or is it better to enter a tail end of a hot spot and actually just make minimal amount? You know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah. So macroeconomics do play a role, but the timing of entry and exit is very important. 100%. I would say, just to carry that whole momentum. And I mean, that's pretty much it.
That's it, man. I think it's a good chat. I think it went for a while.
We can do this for hours. We can do this.
No, it's really good. I really appreciate your time. Thank you, Mr. Matija.
Pleasure, man. Listen, it was you know what it is, like we talk about these things all the time. So it was I actually enjoyed it. Yeah. Thank you for having me on, and we'll definitely have more chats, man. We're gonna make this regular.
Definitely. We will do. Thank you, everyone.
People have to start seeing our heads around social media. Yeah. It's the time is ripe. Yeah. The time is ripe.
100%.
For that.
100%.
Enough of the old heads.
Fantastic. Thank you all for joining us. Cheers. Thank you.
Man. Bye.
That's a wrap for part 2, and a huge thank you to Dr. Matt from HtAG for joining us for this episode. Please like, subscribe, share this with a friend if you feel that they're going to benefit from it. Please check out our website, pinnaclebuyeragents.com.au, and check us out on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and of course, Spotify to stay up to date with all the latest episodes. And we'll see you next time on Property Banter.